The day has arrived. Russia kicking off a month of planetary football madness at its own World Cup. Before the opening match, there was the customary homegrown pageantry. And what's more Russian than, Robbie Williams at the opening ceremony. After his bit, the singer got to see the hosts thump Saudi Arabia 5-0 in the opener. We'll see if that shortens the bookmakers' odds on a Russian side deemed among the weakest on paper in this tournament. So over the next month, at office water coolers, cafes, family gatherings, and of course in fan zones, we all get to be experts on France's choice of a 4-4-2 formation, Neymar's convalescent ankle, the offsides rule, video replay, the chances of each of the 32 nations present. Even if the hosts, again, are not expected to lift the trophy July 15th, Russia's leader already a winner. Just how much political hay can Vladimir Putin make from this tournament? We'll be asking our panel about that. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Russia's World Cup. With us, he is a sports journalist and blogger with The Guardian. Igor Mladenovic is with us. And sitting, I can't help but notice that lovely strip that you're wearing.
Yeah, great memories from 20 years ago.
Oh, so that's the strip from 1998.
It's a bit retro, retro jersey.
Franco-Russian player agent Sergei Medvedev is with us. You're wearing the new Russia jersey.
No, that was four years ago in Brazil. A failure, of course. We didn't win.
Not the ones of the great Dasaev teams of the 1980s.
That was the Soviet Union, the classic shirt. I don't have it, unfortunately.
Okay. And with us as well, Ziad Livan, editor-in-chief of Afrique magazine.
No shirts.
No shirts?
No shirts.
Okay. Give it to us straight. Who's going to win the World Cup?
Listen, I'll be happy if the French team win the World Cup because we live in Paris, and it would be such a good, nice party before summer.
And you're impartial.
And I'm totally impartial. I'm half Tunisian, so if the Tunisian could go as far as they can, it would be good also. I'm African too, so if any one of this team could do a good stuff and go to the semi-finals, I'll be happy too. And in case, I'll vote, if any one of those can make it, I'll vote for Brazil.
All right, the France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24 debate. We've been getting lots of your predictions. Igor, who is going to win the tournament?
Well, I think there are several favourites, Brazil among them, chiefly because they have less pressure than 4 years ago when they were playing on home soil, and because their team is more balanced now. They have more defensive balance thanks to their new coach, Chiche. So I would put Brazil probably as my favourites. On paper, France have a very good chance as well. Some of the players in attack are unparalleled worldwide and are absolutely craving to improve on the final defeat of 2 years ago in the European Championships. There are also, of course, some of the usual contenders, Spain, who have a great team but who just kicked out their coach on the eve of the World Cup.
Was that the right move?
I think under the circumstances it was the right move, and it went to show something that's very important today in football, the conflict between the big clubs, namely here Real Madrid, and the football teams, because Real Madrid basically took Spain's coach without warning the Spanish Football Federation, which was left with nothing else to do but kick out their coach. So I think this is a very current issue as well in football. So yeah, France, England, maybe, Spain and Brazil would be my favourites.
And Germany.
And Germany, of course.
All right, you're not taking huge risks by naming all of those. You said at the outset one favorite, Brazil. I'll remember that. Sergei, what about you? If you had one team to pick?
The teams are always the same favorites. There are a few names that are changing from World Cup to
Of course, there's always a dark. There regularly is a dark horse, at least in the final four.
There are. I will follow personally the teams that I enjoy watching, which can be the surprises. The rising teams, usually they are South American. This year, probably Uruguay and Colombia can make something out of it. I hope that Argentina can do something with Messi, but it's unlikely, I guess. But Colombia, Uruguay, and maybe a few teams like England. England doesn't have any pressure this year. Usually they were a little bit, I wouldn't say sabotage by their own press, but England was always, there was always too high hopes around this team. And
so the pressure is off on
I
England
think
the way the pressure is off on Brazil.
Nobody really believes that they could make something this year, and it's a young team, very ambitious, and they don't remember all the failures that the big players, the big stars have made.
Maybe
before.
England will go far after all. Wow.
Maybe.
Now, if there's one player that everyone's talking about, surely that is Egypt's star striker, Mohamed Salah. He carried Liverpool to the final of the Champions League. He's brushed off an injury and should be fit to play against Uruguay on Saturday. Robert Sutton-Maddox has more.
Football studs in the middle of the ancient treasures of the British Museum in London. An unusual exhibit, raising a footballer to the level of the pharaohs of Egypt. Mohamed Salah, whose exploits on the pitch turn the heads of commentators in his country and beyond. It's a story of a child of the Nile becoming the best player in Africa and the top scorer in the English Premier League. At Salah's current club Liverpool, the fans have even composed a chant in his honour.
If he's good enough for you, he's good enough for me. He scores another few and I'll be Muslim too.
The player is credited with changing the perception of Islam amongst some supporters. Mohamed Salah, a devout Muslim, thanks God for each of his goals, and Liverpool fans worship him.
We all have our own beliefs and our own faith and stuff like that, and I think the goodness and the thanks that he gives to whoever he talks to up there is evident when he plays, and I think that's good.
Bought for €42 million last summer, the player is now worth nearer 200 million. A star in England, and without question the most popular man in his native Egypt. His face is everywhere on the streets of Cairo. There is no official figure, but thousands of Egyptians are thought to have registered his name on the ballots in the last presidential election. His face is a top seller.
Here we only have Mohamed Salah t-shirts, like this one here with the hair, because that haircut is so popular. All the children love him, from the toddlers to the teenagers. They all want something with Salah on it, a t-shirt or a pair of shorts.
But sponsors have had a shock in recent days. Salah was injured as Liverpool lost the Champions League final to Real Madrid. He, the man fated as almost single-handedly qualifying Egypt for their first World Cup in 28 years.
Egypt qualified thanks to him. Without him, we wouldn't be playing or talking about the World Cup.
So will Mohamed Salah be ready for the World Cup? Hector Cooper, the Argentinian coach of the Pharaohs, believes he will be.
And the last time the Pharaohs went to the World Cup, it was 1990. Mohamed Salah was not even born then. Ziad Liman, how much of a phenomenon is he among your readers?
It's a phenomenon, I mean, sportively speaking, talent speaking, in terms of football first. And secondly, it's a political phenomenon because you feel that behind him there's this whole Egyptian population craving for pride, for something that puts them on the world map, that makes them forget about their numerous economic, social, political problems. And so basically he embodies all this in himself, and he manages it quite well because he never takes sides. He's very good at human relation. He's a Muslim player in England. They love him. In Egypt, you'll never hear him about politics.
So the story goes, because their training ground is in Grozny, in Chechnya, that because he's still dogged by that injury that he got in the Champions League final, he didn't go to the first training session, and Kadyrov, the strongman who's the president there, went to get him and bring him to the pitch so they could have a photo op.
I'm not into Kadyrov secrets and stuff like that, but I mean, if the guy plays the first game, it's a miracle. If he plays the second game, it's still a miracle. If he plays well on the third game, I think Egypt will be happy. But is it going to be enough of a Mohamed Salah to be in such a shape that he can carry by himself Egypt to the second round?
So where do Africa's hopes lie in this tournament?
It's always the same story. Great teams, some of them even better than expected, like probably this year Nigeria has a very good team, Senegal has a very good team, Morocco has Tunisia has a very good team. All these are good teams. The thing is how we can move to be a real contender from just being a good team and attraction and being followed and having sympathy? How can we get to the semi-final, be a real contender, maybe scaring some big soccer power teams? I mean, that's the real question.
All right, we're France 24. We're not homers. We're not biased.
Yes.
But yes, we're going to talk a little bit about the French. Their hopes rest on one of the tournament's youngest stars, 19-year-old Kylian Mbappé. The Paris Saint-Germain striker insists he's not feeling the heat.
No, because I'm used to that kind of thing. I live it daily. When you play for a high-profile club like Paris Saint-Germain and a great national team like France, you can't really avoid this kind of thing. You have to take it as it is. It's part of the job. Otherwise, play another sport.
Igor Mladenovic, not yet 20 years old. What do you think of the poise he has?
Well, I believe that Pelé was 17 when he won the World Cup in 1958, and that we're talking about a player in roughly the same bracket. It's not my opinion, it's the opinion of some of the best and most instructed coaches in world football. Mbappé has been absolutely brilliant since starting his professional career at Monaco. Last season he made a great impact at Paris Saint-Germain despite the pressure of being the second most expensive player of all time. I simply think that he can carry France on his shoulders despite his age.
Despite his age.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, they have probably one of the best teams they could line up in years, especially in the offensive side.
And Didier Deschamps, the coach, really playing the youth side. I think that the average age is under 24.
Yes, but remember when they won the World Cup, they had the best defense ever. They had one of the best defense in the history of football. And they could play like the Italians. They would play catenaccio. Nobody could pass all these guys. So the big problem today is they have a weak defense and a crazy, powerful, talented offensive side. So is this going to be balanced enough to win the World Cup? Big question.
Sergei Medvedev?
France is one of the contenders. Definitely, I agree with that point. That defense. France doesn't have any particular style when you speak about French football, French national team. The German team over the past 10 years has built a style with young players, with great dynamic, with a very quick transition between defense and offense. But France doesn't have that. But in one kind of sense, a great defense and individual talents up front was always the strength in France. In '98, it was Zidane.
And you agree there is a question mark over France's defense?
There is a question mark, definitely, but we haven't seen yet the official games. It's been a long time. France has probably lost maybe for the first game 2 of their defenders. We are not really sure who is going to play. Yes, I think that this team might look like '98 because there is talent in Griezmann. There is talent in many other players. People expect a lot of Pogba, a lot of from Mbappé. But I think that basically the strength of France should be defense.
At the outset of the show, Igor, you were saying how Brazil's got its defensive issues sorted out from 4 years ago. What about Neymar? Record signing for Paris Saint-Germain. Hurts his ankle in the Champions League. What was it, back in February during the winter? Goes home to nurse himself, and now he seems fit as a fiddle in training. Have you been able to suss out just how well he is from those warm-up matches?
Well, he seems to be doing very well, and he seems to have anticipated the World Cup quite a long time ago, perhaps at the detriment of some of his club performances.
Does that mean we'll never see him again in Paris?
I'd rather not comment on this. Apparently, the new Paris Saint-Germain coach, Thomas Tuchel, made a great job and convinced him to stay for another season. That's all I know about this.
Will he be a player? Will he be a factor in this?
Definitely, yeah.
There was the financial fair play was an issue also, and since PSG doesn't have anymore this financial fair play threat over his head, at least for the month coming, makes it easier for them to keep Neymar and keep Mbappé and keep all those big names.
I don't think that anyway the board of Paris Saint-Germain will release Neymar in spite of the pressure. They didn't do what they did last summer to just let him go over over a certain team.
Sergey, you mentioned it, how you'd like to see Argentina go far. Last time they went all the way to the final.
Absolutely.
Lionel Messi, can he still carry that team?
You know, we've seen a lot of examples of teams that were above mediocre and that went really far into tournaments. Like 2 years ago, we've seen Wales going really far with only Gareth Bale as a world-class player. Well, their friendlies weren't convincing at all. But 4 years ago, Argentina was defending well, and Messi and a few other players were deciding for the result up front. So maybe this year could be the same. I hope that for them. It's a country that deserves really the World Cup. I was 4 years ago in Argentina. I used to live in Argentina, and the relationship those people, the Argentinians, have with football is uncomparable to what I've seen. So I think they really want it. They really want to get it for their fans, for their country. Football is a really big deal there. And
we had written off the Russians. The president of Russia himself had said this isn't the team that's going to. He basically admitted that it's not going to.
Well, Russia.
They just won 5-0 against Saudi Arabia, though.
Well, yes, we've seen probably two of the worst teams in. Two of the less skilled teams probably in this World Cup. Russia, unfortunately, has probably the weakest team of its history at this World Cup. It's been a long time. I have never. So
don't read anything into that win.
Well, I hope the objective is to get out of the groups. So and that will be difficult because we will have to play Egypt. Well, this 5-0 is a good result because probably if we put a draw against Egypt, the goal difference will be a huge factor. So I'm really happy about that. I haven't seen the two last goals. Unfortunately,
they were both in injury time.
On my way to see you.
Very briefly, because we have to go to the break. If there's an outside team, one word, who is it that to watch? One of the minnows. One of the dark horses?
Possibly go with an African team. Yeah, I'd like to see Nigeria do well. I think they have an outside chance.
All right, we've talked sports. We're going to talk politics when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, and welcome if you're just joining us. It's a World Cup edition of the France 24 debate, and we have some new arrivals. Shona Bhattacharya of Media Watch fame, and France 24's Douglas Herbert from our international affairs desk, a man who knows a thing or two about Moscow, having been assigned there in the past. I also want to welcome back at this point Igor Bogdanovic, a sports journalist and blogger for The Guardian, Sergey Medvedev, who works with an agency that deals with players, football players.
Absolutely.
And Ziad Liman, editor-in-chief of Afrique magazine. Before we turn back to our panel, Shona, the newspapers on the stands here in Paris, all about the World Cup this Thursday.
That's right. I wanted to take a quick look at the situation as it stands. So the first game of the World Cup has come to a close with Russia beating Saudi Arabia 5-0. Before the game, I found this Times of India article. Nope, not that one. That one's for the end. The Times of India article that calls both national teams lowly ranked and isn't shy about telling readers how bad their track records are. Russia, for example, before this match had only won 2 games in various World Cups since the Soviet Union collapse, and Saudi Arabia has yet to make it past the round of 16. The opening ceremony was a showstopper for many reasons. The Huffington Post UK recounts the short performance given by British superstar Robbie Williams. He gave TV audiences the middle finger as he was dressed in a red leopard print suit. Critics say he was bought out by Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, The Sun gets technical with an article on this year's World Cup football called the Telstar 18 that I have right here in my hands on set. It's made by Adidas techies. It's scientifically designed to cut the amount of dip and swerve, which is a technique that's dear to stars like Cristiano Ronaldo and that's bound to make goalkeepers happy
so it's bad for Portugal then.
I guess. I mean, I'm sure he'll still find a way to do it. And then as for who will win, one thing's for sure, says the BBC, according to research, teams that sing their national anthem with enthusiasm and gutso have better chances of winning a match. We also learned that fans chanting together is an animal and impulsive instinct. And finally, we already have one winner of this World Cup in the fashion department. Back to that Vogue article. Vogue says that Nigeria is the best dressed team. We also have an image there of the team traveling in the airplane on the way to Russia, but I guess we don't have it. It's a great, it's a great outfit. I suggest you look it up on the internet.
Wait, are you talking about the way they dress on the plane, or their strip on the?
Even even their jerseys are sold out in a lot of places because they're just really great looking. I mean, you know, if we can next time in the next media watch, we'll take a closer look at that.
Igor, have you checked out the Super Eagles kit?
I have. It's very, very beautiful. Retro looking, a little bit of a groovy style. I really like it. I might buy it if they make it out of their group, which is probably the group of death.
It is the group of death. Sergei, thank you very much, Shona Bhattacharya. Let me ask you, Sergei Medvedev, talk about, you were talking what it means sporting-wise, 5-0. This win, probably not much, is what you told us in part one, if you look at the whole of the tournament up to July the 15th in the final. Politically, though?
Politically, it's, well, every international competition is a huge tool for the Russian power. I'd say any power, probably, but for Russian, maybe even more at this time. Well, we've seen that during the Winter Olympic Games, this World Cup. Well, I don't want to get involved too much into politics. I'm not very fond of Vladimir Putin myself, but...
Can you say he's already won?
I don't know. The tournament just started. Probably, I don't know. Probably he added some points for his popularity, probably. But I prefer to see this tournament as something that I like, because it's a party of football. It's a great thing that gathers people. I think that Russia needed it, actually. Russia needed it very much. I'm in contact with many people in Moscow who are celebrating with people from many countries, and it's an important thing for Russia. That it's important for Russia not to stay isolated. It's important that the population, that the people share values with other countries, and for me, it's much more important than...
Yeah, our chief sports editor, Ketevan Gorjestani, was saying just that, how she was noticing in the fan zone how happy the Russians were, not just because of the win, but also to be mixing with fans coming from other parts of the world. Ziad Liman.
I mean, it's complicated because they're also the nationalistic brand. It's also something you hear a lot in Russia. Politically, we're a siege. We have to defend ourselves, and you have the whole propaganda of the regime. We have to be strong. We have to assert ourselves, blah, blah, and it works quite well. Where I agree with you is to have this infusion of outsiders, of people thinking differently, bringing another perspective, coming from Europe, from Africa, from the Americas. I think it's very important, and it's a good side, which will show also how the other part of the world may think. And it's important. As far as a team, I think the Russians have been very clear in terms of PR for the past weeks. We don't have a team. We don't care much. What we want is have a great World Cup, show that Russia is strong, that we can bring a World Cup to the world, organization, security, travel, tourism, blah, blah. If the team makes something, it's the added cherry on the cake.
Added cherry on the cake. Hours ahead of the tournament's kickoff, the main opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, freed after his latest 30-day sentence for organizing illegal protest. Navalny observed that all the cells in the jails where he were had been freshly painted, and the usual pit latrines were replaced with flush toilets. He said, quote, "They may need to arrest British fans for drunken rampages and don't want things to look bad." That quip aside, though, Doug, the tournament kicks off with Ukrainian film director Oleg Sentsov entering the second month of a hunger strike. At least 3 others are on hunger strike. So they can paper over some of the domestic issues.
Not everything, but listen, you're right in the sense this is a month-long showcase for Vladimir Putin, and the truth is, yes, soccer, football is, one of the world's most popular games. Everyone's going to be watching this. FIFA's logo, its slogan, we were talking about this in the last hour, is sport without politics. And that logo is something that Vladimir Putin absolutely loves because it is very much in his interest to make sure that there is no politics injected into this World Cup. The Russians, you could argue, yeah, they need a bit of a pick-me-up right now. Yes, there's a nationalist tone in Russia. Yes, there's a lot of, gung-ho patriotism, but it's undeniable, no matter where you stand, inside or outside, that it's been on hard times from an international perspective right now. Just a few weeks ago, let's not forget, we were talking about Britain accusing Moscow of providing a nerve agent that killed a former Russian intelligence officer in an English town of Salisbury. And Russia, we were talking in terms of Putin becoming perhaps an international pariah. There were murmurs, will there be boycotts of this World Cup? Obviously, those boycotts have not materialized, although a lot of countries did send lower-level representatives, not very senior, not many world leaders. I think there's only, 15 foreign leaders attending, and 8 of those are either former Soviet republics or some breakaway regions.
But we did see, of course, the Saudi crown prince in the box.
We saw the Saudi crown prince in the box. But in this sense, what I do think, there's a little bit of defiance in this World Cup. There's a little bit of a sense saying, Putin showing the West in no uncertain terms, you've tried to isolate us. You've tried to make us out to be pariahs. You all have been ganging up on us. Well, look, when push comes to shove, look what we can do. We can host the biggest sporting event in the world, and the biggest one since Soviet times that Russia's hosted. And we're doing it. We're going to do it in style, and we're going to do it big.
Vladimir Putin's World Cup, an even bigger event than the Sochi Winter Games that he hosted in 2014. And while the Russian president may be under sanctions, as Doug was saying, from the West, he and FIFA's new boss, Gianni Infantino, clearly are two men who understand each other.
I would like to express special thanks to Mr. Infantino and underline his commitment to the ideals of sport and justice, and of course his consistently positive attitude towards our country. We know that Infantino has become the leader of FIFA during difficult times, but he's preserved like a real fighter.
During difficult times, Igor Mladenovic, of course, the corruption scandal that forced the ouster of Infantino's predecessor, Sepp Blatter. Your thoughts in that FIFA Congress that took place on Wednesday, seeing Gianni Infantino and Vladimir Putin together?
Well, I think one thing that is very special about this World Cup is the shift to Asia. I think Russia is a country which is half in Europe, half in Asia geographically.
The stadiums are in Europe.
Although the host cities are in the same sort of time zone, which is Europe. But the sponsors of this World Cup, for the first time, we have seen the entrance of several Chinese partners and sponsors to FIFA, because Western sponsors sort of pulled out. I won't give any brands, but some very well-known brands pulled out because of what FIFA is currently associated with. And so these Chinese brands have come up, and we will see them across pitches during this World Cup. And I think it's a shift which, through football, also reflects the shift we see in society, in world economy, this sort of shift of the global balance of power, which I think FIFA is now a catalyst of.
A shift in the balance of power, or in the end, the corruption doesn't matter. Everybody loves football, so let's sponsor it.
No, it does matter. Some of them remember quite well the sales of Geneva or wherever in Switzerland and in America. I mean, you still you can have judges around the world. I mean, prosecuting some of those very powerful people, and that happened 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So I think people care about corruption. I think FIFA cares about corruption because they're defending a brand and they're defending a very good business. And even if it's not as clear as it should be, it has to be sufficiently honest so we can get sponsors and everything. Secondly, the cup is returning back to America. which is very important in 4 years. And then you'll get back to the traditional sponsors, old money, old capitalistic money, and then we'll see.
But
we'll see the equilibrium between the new Chinese, Asian money, which is a problem because they don't play soccer very well. Also, I mean, how can we build a team? How can you attract people if you don't have the team? I mean, soccer is a very complicated business. At the end, it's also on the field, and if you don't have the stars, if you don't have the teams, if you don't carry enthusiasm on the field, how can you get sponsors? How can you get money? I mean, this is crazy. Look at the way Saudi Arabia is back in the center. Even if, in that case, even if on the field it's not that great, we'll see for the next games. But there is basically an alliance between Saudi Arabia and America to bring the cup in America and marginalize a friend country like Morocco. So it's rough.
Yeah, Morocco, the loser of that bid to win the 2026 World Cup in favor of, I guess some are calling it the NAFTA World Cup, because it's going to be the U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
With walls.
If NAFTA still exists.
If NAFTA still exists, yeah, with Donald Trump perhaps at times shooting the bid in the foot by threatening those who might vote against. But let me ask you, Igor Milanovic, even there are big eyebrows that have been raised, because even before the winner was announced, without any bidding process, they'd already given the TV rights for that World Cup to Fox Sports and to Telemundo. What does that tell you about FIFA, the new FIFA?
Well, TV rights have always been the main source of income for FIFA, and it's a deal which is much bigger than any democratic process, I think, for them.
So it's got nothing to do with fairness, is it?
When you see that
the TV rights.
When you see that the US failed to qualify for this World Cup in Russia, despite the amount that Fox has paid to get the TV rights for the Russian World Cup, it is for them business-wise a pretty bad operation. And so I guess FIFA have to make up for it, because they're losing some Western brands in terms of sponsorship, so they have to reinforce the Western media broadcasters.
Most of the insiders think that Infantino was an American candidate at the helm of the FIFA. So basically there was no way that World Cup...
Even if he's European?
Yeah, you know, money cross borders, we know that. There was no way that cup wouldn't go to America and Canada and Mexico, but Canada and Mexico are junior partners. And it's just that there was such an humiliation that for the Americans to lose the 2020 and 2024, the 2018 and 2022 Qatar Cup, he had to deliver. There's no way that cup would go to Morocco, which is a shame, actually.
I was just going to go back, just make a quick passing point with the, talking about FIFA corruption, but, you could also, the Russian corruption that's gone into building the facilities for this World Cup. I know it sounds cliche to talk about it. We talked about this during the Sochi Olympics, and obviously a lot of other Olympics. I'm not trying to single out Russia, but it's been particularly conspicuous in this case. What were the original costs? Under 500 million euros or so, and then they ballooned to about 10 billion euros, and a lot of these stadia that were built in the various cities where these matches are being played, to line the pockets of a lot of Putin's oligarch friends. These fancies. You have these great giant new stadium. I'd be curious what they're going to be used for after the World Cup in cities where it's not like they were renovating the whole city or the whole city benefited from this infrastructure development. It was really concentrated on a few massive facilities that the tourists will see for a month or so. And when they leave, you're going to have basically the rest of these cities rotting infrastructure, not too many benefits from this World Cup.
There has been money spent on infrastructure.
I agree with you. It's a generalized problem. Construction in general, not only the facilities for the World Cup, is the easiest way to steal money, let's say. Let's put words on things. And and yes, there are stadiums that in Russia today, after analysis, I've read many of them, there are cities that do not need 40,000 seat stadiums, like Saransk, the cities like Kaliningrad, they will have a lot of trouble to use the stadiums afterwards, because they're competing for concerts, for whatever you want, for events with Riga, with Vilnius, with nearby and with the cities nearby, with the big capitals. So That will be a great problem, and already today we are seeing that in the administrations of the regions where the World Cup will be held, the administrations do not know what to do with the stadiums because
venues across 13 cities, everywhere from Kaliningrad, which you mentioned there, is on the Baltic, and we have to Ekaterinburg, which is 3,000 kilometers. To the east.
Well, it will be a problem in maybe 4 cities. It's not a generality. In Moscow, in St. Petersburg, and in Rostov and Yekaterinburg, it will not be a huge problem. I guess they have teams that play in the top league in Russia, in the Premier League.
It's not that easy and it's not that innocent to bring the World Cup into your country because you're bringing a lot of attention, you're bringing a lot of journalists, you're bringing a lot of energy around that. And
but while the Sochi games were going on, nobody was talking about all this stuff. The doping came afterwards.
Yeah, but remember, I mean, the whole Sochi game were also marred by the Ukrainian story at that time, and the whole effect of that conquering Russia was just destroyed.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, but soccer is a little different because there's this popular also feeling, but still you'll have attention. People are going to look at Russia for 1 month. They're going to try to see political figures. They will try to cover stories which are not specifically football. And you can remember in the World Cup that were held in difficult countries, it always happened like that. The older people around the room can remember Argentina in 1978. There are other stories. I mean, you can remember even Brazil was a very interesting story because they were trying to sell that Brazilian emerging
Brazilian miracle, and it turned out, of course, there were all these corruption stories.
It's not working the way it's supposed to work.
Ziad Liman, Douglas Herbert, Igor Mladenovic, and Sergei Medvedev, thank you very much. Stay with us because it's time for our daily World Cup Journal. I called it the World Cup Journal, the World Cup Daily. Hello, Simon Harding.
Hi, Francois. How are you?
So the first game is under the belt, and we heard Sergei saying, well, 5-0, a sparrow doth not the spring make.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, welcome everyone to this first edition of the World Cup Journal, World Cup 2018. 21st edition of the World Cup has kicked off in style with a victory for the host nation to start off with a dominating performance against Saudi Arabia. The Russians were pushed back in the first 5 minutes by their guests, but then never really looked back. A 5-0 victory against Saudi Arabia, with Golovkin and co taking a decisive lead thanks to that big scoreline. But 3 points in the bag for them and mission accomplished. Well, following the game for us was our chief sports editor, Ketevan Gorjestani. Ketevan, no one expected Russia to strike such a heavy blow. It's a perfect start for them, isn't it?
Yes, and it was celebrated as such, as the perfect start that it is for the host country. We were talking to some of the fans ahead of the game, and they were all telling us that they didn't have very high hopes for their national team for the rest of the competition. But what they wanted, what was needed from that Russian team, was that opening victory here in Moscow, in the capital, at the opening game of this World Cup, to kick off this World Cup in style. And of course the Russians extremely happy about that victory. They of course would have signed for a short win, but they did much more than that. They really, as you said, after the first 5-10 minutes, after that first goal by Yuri Gazinski, they really just dominated the Saudis. As you see, the atmosphere is very, very festive here, but to keep going on yes, everything. They're all here. But to keep going on that game, Yuri Gazinski, who scored that opening goal. And then it was pretty much all down to the great coaching from the Russian coach, because the substitute Denis Cheryshev was the one who scored the second goal right before halftime. The Russians, who were leading already by 2-0 at halftime, would have signed for that score at the end of the game, but they scored 3 more times in the second half. The third goal came from Artur Djubia, Artyom Dzubya, who also was a substitute, coming in just 2 minutes before scoring that goal on pretty much his first touch of the game. And then finally 2 goals in stoppage time, another one by Sherishev and one by Golovin to round up that big victory, as I'm joined by a little mascot. So as you see, the atmosphere is great, and of course the Russians are extremely happy to be starting off that competition in style, and I'll leave it with them.
I noticed Georgian flags, by the way.
Caravan, you're already very popular.
All right. Okay.
Well, the first results, Francois, therefore, are in. No one really expecting, however, Saudi Arabia or Russia to qualify any, to go all the way. The favourites are the powerhouses of football. You've got Brazil, you've got Germany, you've got France, you've got Spain. Each nation with their trademark styles and, of course, the danger men. Will Germany's solidity shine once again? Can the flair of Brazil or Neymar lead them to glory, or will France emulate their prise 20 years on from 1998? Owen Barnett has this report.
The bookies' favourite, Brazil. The 5-times winners arrived in Russia looking stronger than they have in years, having won 17 of the last 21 matches under new manager Tite. Their star player Neymar is back in the fold following injury. And he's not just sampling Russian delicacies. After scoring on his return against Croatia, he looks every bit the team talisman.
I don't know what Neymar's limit may be. He has an impressive creative and technical capacity. If you put him in action in the final third of the field, he can be lethal.
Neymar's record speaks for itself. His latest strike puts him level with Romario as his country's 3rd all-time top scorer. But are Brazil too reliant on their superstar? Last time Neymar was injured at a World Cup, Brazil were then thrashed 7-1 by Germany. The Mannschaft went on to win the 2014 World Cup, and the holders head to Russia as another firm favourite. Germany have a reputation as a team that delivers on football's biggest stage. Their track record speaks for itself. Runners-up in 2002, they came 3rd in 2010 before winning in Brazil. A formidable run, though they come to Russia struggling for form, with key players Ozil and Neuer not fully fit. Another contender to lift the cup, Spain. Spain dominated international football between 2008 and 2012, winning a World Cup as well as 2 European Championships, though they have since slipped from the top spot. Their midfield will be crucial if they are to regain it, a blend of old and new, younger talents like Asensio and Isco alongside David Silva and team legend Iniesta playing in his final World Cup. Last but not least, France. The team are hoping to add a 2nd World Cup to the one they won 20 years ago, boasting a lethal attack featuring Kylian Mbappe and fan favourite Antoine Griezmann.
Antoine is a skillful leader. He's also someone, as you've seen, who has a certain joie de vivre. He's a driving force in the team.
France's skillful players are many, but they will need leaders on the pitch to ensure there is no repeat of the 2016 Euros final. After losing to Portugal, the question lingers over Les Bleus: can their talents work together as a team?
Well, moving on to tomorrow's fixtures. Good news for Egypt, who announced that Liverpool star Mo Salah will be fit to play in their opening match against Uruguay. The Egyptian, who injured himself during the Champions League final in a challenge with Sergio Ramos, has been a doubt for the last couple of weeks. He will be off the beat, though, having not played since Liverpool's 3-1 defeat. This is only the 2nd time these two countries meet, with Uruguay winning the only other confrontation in 2006. Edinson Cavani and co have never been beaten by African opposition at a World Cup.
Mo Salah is doing very well indeed. He's recovered very, very quickly. We've paid a lot of attention to him. He's had training sessions with us. We still have to see how the training session goes on Thursday, but I can almost assure you 100% that he will play unless there are any unforeseen factors at the very last minute. So we're all feeling very optimistic that he will be with us tomorrow.
Just to finish off, Francois, let's take a quick look at tomorrow's programme. Egypt, who will be playing against Uruguay. Then in Group B, the first fixtures there, Morocco taking on Iran. And, of course, the huge clash, Portugal versus Spain.
Good news, Sergei Medvedev says England might go far in the tournament. Many thanks, Simon Harding. I want to thank all our panelists. Thank you for joining us here for this World Cup edition of the France 24 debate.